Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, did you want to?
Sorry, I'll let you.
Next time.
I'm in love with you.
Snap out of it.
I'll have what she's having.
Too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm gonna make them alive. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours.
Caustic wit is my religion.
I would make a great queen because I am so stubborn.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where we take a little bit of time off because we need to take some time off, but then we come back and we start talking about fascinating things like Ghostbusters and Suicide Squad and Scarlett Johansson. So, as always, I'm Lauren Humphries Brooks, and with me is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
How are you? You actually got to go to a wedding. How was that?
I went to my baby sister's wedding. It was so weird and awesome. And she's just such a beautiful bride. Her husband, I'm still getting used to that. I mean, I've known the kid for like 10 years, but because they started dating their freshman year of college, and I guess I didn't meet him until a little bit later. But yeah, I've known him for a long time. He's been part of the family for, ever. And now it's official. And it was a lot of fun. It was great to see some cousins and some aunts that I haven't seen in a million years. And yeah, it was nice to be in a setting where it was just like, wow, we're celebrating something happy and the world is good. And these two just beautiful, beautiful people who are, my sister is definitely, I have 3 siblings, and my sister is definitely the best of the 4 of us. She's just the kindest person. And yeah, it was nice to get to be reminded that other people see that too,
Mm-hmm.
Like her maids of honor, I guess, when they were giving their speech at the reception, it was just, they were talking about how she's so humble and she's so generous and just all these qualities that I've always admired in her. And it's just like, oh, other people see that too. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful time. And I got to go golfing with my dad, and which is something I've wanted to do for a long time too. And it was like pretty much my only chance this summer to get away, because it's like every time I'm planning on like, oh, I think I'm going to go out of town really quick this weekend. Then someone's like, hey, can you come watch my dog? Hey, can you come take care of this? Hey, I have this need. And it's like, I just want to get a weekend away. So that had to count for my weekend away.
Uh-huh.
But it was beautiful and it was wonderful. And yeah, enjoyed every minute.
Oh, well, that sounds so lovely.
Yeah. So they don't listen to the podcast, but congratulations, Matt and Aaron. Yes, my sister's name is Erin. It's a whole thing in my family, whatever.
Aaron, Karen, and what's your brother's name?
Mark,
I ask.
and Steven.
I was gonna say, like, you could have named one of the guys Aaron, like Aaron.
I went out with a guy once named Darren, and I was like, no, this is not gonna work.
Karen, Darren, and her sister Erin. Oh my god.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yep, that's how it is in my family. So I'm also named after my aunt, my dad's younger sister, for reasons that no one has ever been able to explain. My dad just says he liked the name, and that caused a little bit of confusion when I was checking into the hotel.
You were Karen, and then there's
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're there for the Peterson wedding and they're like, what's your last name? And you're like, Peterson. And then you have this, it was a whole thing, but it was fun.
Sounds lovely.
Lovely.
Well, congratulations to your sister. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you got to get away for a weekend and like get to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, and then this weekend too, we're actually recording this episode on a Sunday because I did get a little bit of a quick getaway that I had to plan months ago in order to be able to do this. So people didn't try to take up my weekend, but I went camping with some friends out to Joshua Tree, which is out in the middle of the desert. And I was like prepared for it to be blazing hot. Instead, it poured down rain. So, it was great though. It was beautiful.
I remember so I come from the middle of New York State, and it's very rural and everything, but it's very wet. And so every single time I've been camping in this area, it's always rained at least one of the days. It doesn't matter. Like, it can be like, in the middle of a week that is nothing but sun. And then the day that you go camping, it's like pouring rain. I remember going camping with my friends in high school, and like we set up the tent in the pouring rain. There were mosquitoes everywhere. It was just... No. It wound up being loads of fun, but it was also hilarious because we were soaked for like the first half of the day.
Yeah, one of my friends is from Seattle. He's lived here for a few years now, but he's from Seattle, and he was just like, I've never been camping when it wasn't raining. And he's like, and I thought, I'm going to the middle of the desert in California in the summer. I'm finally gonna have a dry camping trip.
He brought the rain with him, obviously.
He did. Yeah, he did. I blame him.
Well, that's the camping weather report.
That's right.
As we always do at the beginning of this podcast about films. I don't
How
know
have you been? What have you been up to?
I'm actually upstate. I decided to stay an extra week, partially because I wanted to have a weekend off where I just did not have to do anything, and it dovetailed quite nicely. The Friday and the Saturday dovetailed quite nicely with you going away. So I was like, oh, I can have Friday and Saturday off.
I'm so nice. Glad I could help you out.
Don't have to do anything. So went walking. It has actually been really nice up here. This is the first kind of grayish day that we've had in a while. And so went for a walk, went and got ice cream, did like just fun, nice things locally, which has been nice. I definitely needed it. I've been overworked, unfortunately. Yeah. Fortunately / unfortunately, I'm like, I have work, which is good, because I can earn money and pay my rent and do all the things that I need. Some important things. Do. That's good. But on the other hand, I'm like, but I would really like some time off.
Yeah, it's I've been kind of in that situation too, where it's like I have a coworker who retired last year, and they apparently do not plan on replacing her. And so my department, who used to have 7 permanent employees, now has 2 permanent employees. And I recently looked it up, and I was like, oh, cool. I have over 300 hours of vacation time just sitting there waiting to be used because I cannot get time away because they will not give us more people. And it's just, that's a great way to burn out your staff. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's been a weird situation to be continually employed, right? Particularly in the current context, and with so many people who've been furloughed or who've lost their jobs, etc. And so on the one hand, it's like, oh, okay, I'm still getting work, I'm still employed, but I'm tired and I want to have that time off. I want to have a little bit of, breathing space. And it's kind of a weird space to be in, because on the one hand, you're very grateful for having work and having money and being able to make money. And on the other hand, it's just like, oh God, a couple of weeks off would be awesome right now.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to complain, because I definitely am grateful that I have a job. I was never affected by layoffs or anything like that. But at the same time, it's also frustrating when I'm like, gosh, I know some really great people who are out of work right now. That would be amazing to replace my retired coworker, give someone else a job and give me a break.
Yeah, exactly. There's that too. I mean, you're in a different situation than I am, but yeah. So that is the employment report and the weather report from our film
all the
podcast.
Content you come to us for
from our film podcast. All right, so let's
complain about dudes.
Let's talk about movies. Let's complain about dudes. I want to start just right at the top with the Ghostbusters trailer, the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, which came out over the past week, I think. I'm still a little confused as to timing. And so this is pretty much just more of the same. We've seen trailers and clips and things like that from this film, which is finally going to get released after being postponed because of the pandemic last year.
Well, we think it's going to, because you have to remember there's this Delta variant that is apparently as contagious as the chicken pox.
Which I've seen different, like, I've seen different epidemiologists being like, I don't think that that's quite accurate. I think we need to pull back on that a little bit. But yeah, everybody wear your masks. If you're vaccinated, wear masks indoors in public spaces.
Just do it.
And like, just do it. It's another layer of protection.
Like, no, they're not fun. None of us want to, but the more we do it, the sooner we don't have to anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But so possibly the new Ghostbusters film is going to come out at some point. And so they released a trailer for it, and I had to laugh because the reaction to the trailer overall was pretty much just like, this doesn't look like any fun, which it doesn't. It looks like a really weirdly serious kind of Stranger Things-esque movie about Ghostbusters, which is just odd. And so it got me thinking a lot about nostalgia and why we like prize these things. One of the things you have to say about the first two Ghostbusters films, the original ones, right, is that they're silly. They are silly. They're like, I mean, you have to remember this was originally a conception by Diane Aykroyd and John Belushi about like Ghostbusters from the underworld, basically. This was a completely different idea, right? But this is SNL alums. This is like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis fighting ghosts. Like it is silly. These are ghost exterminators. And the first two films were silly. So for that matter is the 2016 Ghostbusters. It's very much in the same vein of silliness. It's like, this isn't really serious. This isn't really, oh, it's the apocalypse. Yeah, but it's also like an exploding marshmallow guy. Like that's
hilarious.
Yeah, that's funny. Right? It's supposed to be funny. It's not really that scary. It's maybe scary to you if you're 8 years old or something like that, but definitely not scary for adults. It's a silly comedy. And this trailer just makes this particular film look so self-serious. It takes itself so seriously that I'm like, you know, why are we doing this? What is it, like, who is this for? I think that's one of the questions that in watching it, I was like, is this for fans of the original films? Because this doesn't have the same kind of feeling to the original films.
Well, according to director Jason Reitman, son of director Ivan Reitman of the first two movies, remember that was a whole big thing that happened, you know, a year or two ago, was when he was like, we're going to return Ghostbusters to the fans who only liked one out of three movies.
Yeah, and that's what I think is kind of produced such weird reactions to this, because everyone's going, but this doesn't look like any fun. It's like, yeah, this is exactly what those assholes who were, you know, shouting about the fact girls are being Ghostbusters, how dare you? This is pretty much what they were asking for. They were asking for something that pandered to them and that treated this franchise, which is barely even a franchise, with the same seriousness that they do. And it's like, guys, literally the things that you actually like about Ghostbusters, when you come down to it, are not any of that. Like, this isn't serious. Yeah. This isn't important, particularly.
Exactly.
And it just comes down to that. But I was interested in one of the things that Matt Zoller Seitz said earlier, and I very seldom agree with him on a multitude of things, but I thought that he brought up an interesting point. He said, I will never understand why some people treat Ghostbusters like a religion. It's so slapped together. That's the source of any charm that it has. And I mean, I'm someone with a Ghostbusters tattoo. I love Ghostbusters. I love the 2016 film. One of the reasons why I love it is the fact that it's very silly, and it's taking these very supposedly serious elements like, you know, scary ghosts and the apocalypse and all that, and making fun of it, basically being like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he's right in a certain sense. It is very slapped together. None of the films are particularly perfect films. They're well constructed and they're funny, but these are not like, you know, tightly honed comedic horror comedies or anything like that. These are very sort of silly, freewheeling, ridiculous movies. This is the kind of thing, like when I was a kid, I used to think that the two Ghostbusters movies were the same film, and that the Marshmallow Man and the Statue of Liberty got into a fight at the end. Like, that's how I remembered it, right?
That would be an amazing movie.
Which I would definitely, if they want to make another Ghostbusters movie where the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the Statue of Liberty get into like a Keiju style battle, I would be so down for that. Like that would just like finally my childhood memory will come to fruition.
Maybe it wasn't a memory, maybe it was a premonition.
Exactly. I remember watching it again as an adult and being like, wait a minute, doesn't the Marshmallow Man fight the Statue of Liberty? Like I'm
And everyone
positive
just looked
that
at you
happens.
like, what are you talking about?
I'm positive that happens. But apparently it didn't. Like,
It very much did not.
Made me
Except
very
for In
sad.
Your Brain, which, you know, there's some great movies in your brain, so. But yeah, well, one of the things is like, yeah, just going back to what Matt said on Twitter, and some, you know, we've talked about this a little bit before when the movie was about to come out, before it got delayed one of 1800 times. Yeah, there's just this, like, I mean, they have Ghostbusters Day or whatever, and which I think they do on the anniversary of when the first film was released in 1984. I think I might be correct about that.
That sounds right, yeah.
And yeah, like they have badgered Paul Feig, they've badgered Leslie Jones, they've, you know, just been so mean about anything that's not like part of the Ghostbusters world that they have created. And I don't understand it, because yeah, Ghostbusters is a lot of fun. I remember going to see it in the theater in 1984 with my dad, and I was scared because I was like 7, you know, but over the years I've seen it so many times, and it's part of my childhood. It's part of my childhood. And it's a movie that I can turn on now. I can quote it to death. It never gets old, but also it's silly, it's goofy, and people just, because they just have to take all these things so seriously and they have to hang on to, like, I remember when 2016 was first announced, they hadn't even started filming it yet. We hadn't seen a single picture, and all these dudes were whining that it was ruining their childhood. And I'm sorry, but if a movie made today can ruin your entire childhood, then I hate to tell you, fellas, but your childhood sucked.
Yeah, the idea that like, well, and what it comes down to, what that really came down to was the fact that it was casting women.
Yep.
And not just women, because I remember some of the whole build up to that, and there were all these discussions when they first began saying that like, oh, they're going to make the next Ghostbusters film is going to be a reboot, and it's going to feature female Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
I remember kind of the rehearsal of like, okay, who would we cast? And one of the things that began happening was that they were talking about like women with big tits. They were talking about, they were essentially saying, and I don't want to knock Megan Fox because I think Megan Fox is awesome, but they were not really referring to Megan Fox because she's a great actress. They were referring to Megan Fox because they think she's hot. And things like that. So they were like, oh, Megan Fox and Lindsay Lohan, I remember, was someone that they began talking about as being like, oh, she should be in the next Ghostbusters film. And what happened, I think two things happened with the 2016 Ghostbusters. One, it got kind of latched onto by the Gamergate crowd. We have to remember that Milo Yiannopoulos was a part of the attacks on Leslie Jones on Twitter, etc.
Oh my gosh, I forgot he existed.
Well, yeah, because he's like been deplatformed and no one pays attention to him anymore. But that was what was going on.
Why
like,
you deplatform people?
He was one of the major kind of forces behind those attacks on Leslie Jones specifically. But you know, you can't have someone like Milo Yiannopoulos can be an asshole, but you have to have a whole bunch of assholes behind him in order for it to make any difference. And that's what was really concerning and what was really upsetting about all of that. But I think that one of the things that happened was that it wasn't just, we're going to make this about women. It became very clear, particularly when they cast the women that they cast, that this was not going to be a male gazy. This was not going to be for a male fantasy. This was going to be for other people, for people that it wasn't just about fantasy. And you look at the women that they cast, none of these women are particularly the male fantasy types. They're not the women that are going to be treated as sex objects on screen. And I think that that's one of the things that made a lot of these assholes really angry is that they realized at some point, and they were right, that this film was not being made specifically for them. And that's really what made them angry. It wasn't even about Ghostbusters per se. It was about the fact that this was not their movie. This was not something that was being directed towards them. This was being directed towards other people who might actually enjoy Ghostbusters. It was being directed towards women. It was being directed towards children, and who might actually be able to identify with those women and accept those women, not a bunch of misogynist assholes who just want to objectify them. And that's definitely one of the things that was happening with that whole thing.
And I think that this real, just, you know, like what Matt calls this, like, religion, this religious, you know, reverence that people have for the original, I think that really started in earnest with the 2016 Ghostbusters. There's always been a fandom, but I don't think that it became this like ownership thing until, like you're talking about, until they started to feel like that was being taken away from them.
Well, and we've seen it, and actually kind of the 2016 Ghostbusters, as sort of surprising as it was, is not surprising at all in retrospect. Because we've seen the films that have come after that, and the attacks on Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, the attacks on Birds of Prey, the attacks on, to a lesser extent, but it's still there, the anger surrounding Wonder Woman. And at each point, it's become more about this thing that for a very long time was directed specifically towards straight white men. No longer being made specifically for them, right? It was saying, like, we're actually making this for people that aren't you. You can play, you can engage with this, but this is not specifically for you. You are not the main focus of this film and of this franchise. And that really made them angry. So I think that it's sort of, in a lot of ways, you know, we've talked about it before, that Ghostbusters 2016 came out before the 2016 election came out. So it was just kind of in the build up towards what eventually became Trump, and all of that. But it was kind of an early marker for the way that that media was going and the way that fandom was going, and this very real anger that is coming from these men who truly believe that everything is supposed to be for them. And if you make anything that is not exactly what they want, and a lot of it is about objectification, a lot of it is about, you know, women without agency, women who really are just there in order for the men to ogle them, all of that kind of thing. As soon as you begin doing that, then they're going to get angry about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that Ghostbusters sort of suffered as a result of that. But it's also it was never really about Ghostbusters per se.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And this movie doesn't look like it's going to be fun. It might be a competently made film and it might have a decent story, but it's not going to be the silly, goofy fun that Ghostbusters always has been, because Jason Reitman doesn't make those kinds of movies. He just doesn't. And so, yeah, you get what you ask for, I guess. So there will be some people who'll be like, yeah, this is perfect. And then there's going to be some of us who are like, make Ghostbusters fun. Give me Ghostbusters Answer the Call Part 2. I need more Kate McKinnon in my life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, you know, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, I kind of hope that this movie is good, but I really don't expect it to be. Nothing that has surrounded it has convinced me. This really is for sad white men. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so you get what you pay for, guys. Like, this is what you wanted. Here you go. Speaking of sad white men, that
was a nice one. I like it.
I think this is a great segue, actually. Mm-hmm. David Ayer.
Very sad, very white, very
David
man.
Ayer, yes. So David Ayer, for those who don't know, David Ayer is no blame there, because there's no reason for you to know. He directed Suicide Squad, the original, whatever that was. I don't even remember what year it was. 2016. Oh my
gosh, the best and the worst movies that year.
2016 Suicide Squad.
one of the two movies we're talking about today was on my 2016 top 10 list. And let me tell you, it was not Suicide Squad.
So, yeah. So David Ayer directed Suicide Squad, and of course, this film was not particularly beloved. It's a mess. It's a very messy film. It has all kinds of problems. I admit, and I was saying this to Karen earlier this week, that this was actually at that point, this was one of my favorite DC films, because up until that point there had only been like the Batman movies and the Superman movies, all of which are deeply depressing.
Yeah.
And Suicide Squad had this like element, and it's a terribly problematic film. It is not a well-made film, particularly. It's not good, but there were definitely elements in the film that I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, there's some fun stuff. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is obviously wonderful, and she's just gone off on her own with that character, and I love that. But it was there even in kind of the objectification of that character and the treatment of that character in that film. She was so much fun. She was so good, and so obviously invested in making this character as good as she could make it, in the context of a not great film. So there's some good stuff in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, when you said that earlier this week, I was just like, oh my gosh, Lauren, wait, oh crap, you might be right. Like, because then I started thinking like, oh yeah, by 2016 we'd only had Man of Steel, which is not good. We'd had Batman versus Superman, which is not good. And what else was there by that point?
The Nolan Batman films.
Well, I love those, but I'm not counting those in the DCEU. I feel like those are a totally separate thing. But
yeah, they are. But I just, even thinking about those films as being even tangentially connected to the rest, like, those are heavy, dark.
They are
depressing films. They're not. There's no sense of fun in those films. Suicide Squad was actually, bizarrely enough, one of the first DCEU films I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. There's some fun stuff here. Not a good movie. I am not defending it at all, by the way. But so David Ayer, so James Gunn now has made a version of The Suicide Squad. It's
a different movie because it's The Suicide Squad,
which is getting some early critical praise. You know, it hasn't actually been released yet, so we don't know how people are actually going to react to it once more human beings have seen it. But it's getting good buzz so far. And Ayer decided to take this opportunity to release a long, poorly spelled, somewhat disturbing statement, basically, about how his version of Suicide Squad had been taken away from him. And that the studio cut, what he says is, the studio cut is not my movie. And my cut is not the 10-week director's cut. It's a fully mature edit by Lee Smith, standing on the incredible work by John Gilroy. He goes on to say, it has traditional character arcs, amazing performances, a solid third act resolution. A handful of people have seen it. He continues to say, and this is where I began to get like, what is happening here? I never told my side of the story and never will. I'm old school like that, so I kept my mouth shut and took the tsunami of sometimes shocking personal criticism. Now, I find it really weird that you release like a couple of pages of this statement at the point where the new version is coming out.
Yeah.
To basically say, you haven't seen my movie. I will never tell you what my feelings are, but here's another page about my feelings. It's all very weird, and Ayer has kind of been on this kick about how, really ever since the Snyder Cut thing got speed, right? Began to gain speed. He's been on this whole kick of how Suicide Squad was not, the film that he intended to make, all of that. Now, I mean, I believe him. I believe that there's a strong possibility that Warner Brothers took the film away from him at some point, that they recut it, that like things happen that maybe he didn't intend. I don't necessarily think that that's a lie or anything like that. I don't think that that's the problem with Suicide Squad, though. So Karen, go on. What do you think?
I find it personally hilarious that David Ayer is trying to claim that he made a movie that had nuance, because he's not capable of that. I've seen several of his films. He does not make movies with nuance Training Day, the one everyone goes to, is like when you criticize David Ayer, but Training Day, you know what? Training Day only worked because of Denzel Washington. And that, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it, that movie is not a good movie. Is it kind of accurate to real life? Yeah, in some ways it is. Sure. It has a great performance, but it's not a good movie, and it is not a good story. Yeah. He's not a director or writer who is capable of really presenting. Oh, sorry, he didn't direct Training Day, he just wrote it. But I just realized I said that wrong. But anyway, he's not capable of presenting a really well thought out, clear argument, which you can see from this weird tweet that he wrote, or this like thing, this essay or whatever that he wrote, where it's full of errors and mistakes, and not just spelling errors, but just like words that just don't make sense and no punctuation. And I'm just like, you're gonna try to convince me that you had an edit that was just perfect and pristine when you can't even write a freaking paragraph. I'm sorry. I don't want to mock someone's writing abilities, but when you're gonna brag about your skills, take some care in that.
Well, and it seems like what he's trying to get going is something similar to the Snyder Cut thing.
Yeah. 100%.
To push people to, keep on calling for the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, so that
and there are people who are gonna do that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, what I was gonna say was, I mean, I don't. He does not have the degree of fandom clout, I think, that Zack Snyder does. He doesn't have the same kind of dedicated fans that Snyder does. It's possible for him to get this going. I don't know.
He definitely has some fans, and he does have some people who are like on this bandwagon of like, yeah, okay, let's have the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, because there's this weird, I think because of what happened with Justice League, there's kind of this weird idea now where any bad movie that comes from a studio obviously is only bad because of the studio, not because of the filmmakers involved in it. So
yeah, it's particularly when it comes to Warner Brothers, there's been this like conspiracy theory almost going on that like these films have all been taken away from their directors who have the true vision, right? And there's definitely a long history of studios taking films away from directors and recutting them, and and we have all of those things, but I find it weird to center around people like David Ayer, who is such a terrible filmmaker in so many ways. And like I said, the problem that I had with Suicide Squad, it's messy, it's overlong, it's confusing in places. They kill off characters very suddenly, and I know it's called Suicide Squad, but still I feel like there are characters introduced who don't even really get their beat before they're dead, which
it's like, what was the point of that guy?
Yeah, exactly, which is sad and everything. There are some good performances in it. I think it's Jai Courtney is just
oh my gosh, I just had a flashback to an episode a long time ago with Kristen and Kim too, where Kristen was trying to talk about, I think it was Jai Courtney, and we kept trying to we were all getting confused, like that guy or the other guy. Do you remember this?
Yes. I think I was actually talking about the dude. I don't even remember his name. Who's like the head.
Boyd something, I think.
Yeah,
who's in that
like,
mix.
He's the head of. He's like the leader soldier in Suicide Squad. Who's like not one of the villains that has been recruited or anything. But yeah, it's just like the white guy. The white guy is like, which one? Which white guy? I mean, okay, so we've eliminated a few people, but
yeah.
Which generic white man are you talking about? But actually, I think that Jai Courtney is pretty good in Suicide Squad, amazingly enough. But particularly Harley Quinn, and there's been a lot of talk about the treatment of her character in that film, and no amount of meddling, of Warner Brothers meddling, made David Ayer film Margot Robbie the way that he did, or made him write her the way that he did and treat her the way that he did. And that has always been my sticking point in terms of Suicide Squad, the treatment of her character. and the way that the camera looks at her, the way that the other characters treat her, it's gross, it's disrespectful, it's, you know, and like I say, I think that she did a great job managing to get a lot of nuance and a lot of respect out of that character in a film that really didn't want to give her any respect, that really would have preferred her to just be this sex object. And it's more to the point of her performance and her ability to actually be more than that, than it is to anything that David Ayer did, because the treatment of her, her costuming, everything is just so grotesque and so sexist. And that's something that David Ayer did. That's not something that Warner Brothers did.
I mean, really, if David Ayer wants to take credit for anything, he should take credit for the fact that he was so misogynistic in his portrayal of Harley Quinn that it spawned Birds of Prey, which is amazing and perfect.
Yeah, and basically Margot Robbie has been like, okay, I'm just going to take this character and walk away. She's mine now. This doesn't belong to you. She's mine. and you know, I respect that, but yeah, this whole thing is bizarre. It's kind of hilarious. I've gotten in trouble once for responding to David Ayer on something.
Yeah, don't ever do that again.
I was not about to quote tweet him on this one, but I also would like to know, David Ayer, I would really love to know what happened on that submarine, because he mentions his time in the Navy at one point, and it's just like, you will never know what happened on my submarine. It's like, I really want to know what happened on the submarine. Like, I really do. Because
like
now
it was running out of food.
Yeah, I was just like, it sounded like quite a situation, and I would like to know what happened on the submarine.
It sounds like the set of U-571.
Yeah, anyways, there we go. So yes, David Ayer. So the Suicide Squad is going to come out. You know, I'll be interested to see it. I think that James Gunn is a much better director, although I have my problems with him. I just want to see Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn again. I don't care about anyone else.
I'm just so happy that this is going to be released on HBO Max so I can watch it at home and not deal with fanboys in the theater.
Yeah, that's really nice. Speaking of studios that are terrible, Disney. So some people may have heard about this already, that Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney over for breach of contract, I believe, over the box office of Black Widow. She is essentially saying that she has a clause in her contract that involves that she gets a portion of the box office take, and then Disney made this decision to release Black Widow on Disney Plus Premier Access, as well as releasing it in theaters, and the argument is that this has breached her contract. And Disney has responded as we kind of would expect Disney to respond, saying that the lawsuit has no merit whatsoever, that she's already received $20 million in compensation, and that one of the things that I'm not seeing in the Wrap article, but one of the things I know was said about her was that she was being greedy, being callous, right? And I think that
she needs to remember we're in a pandemic, and
and what her lawyer is arguing is that Disney is hiding behind COVID-19 as a way of basically cheating her out of her contract, of the rights that she has. And it's interesting because I think that also now Emma Stone has filed a lawsuit against Disney as well, for similar reasons. That Cruella got released for Cruella. That Cruella got released on Disney Plus, in addition to being released in theaters. And now that was earlier in the year, so it was before a lot of theaters were reopened even. But there's definitely an argument to be made there. I mean, if they have as part of their contract an investment in the box office take, and Disney is sort of going around that by releasing it on Disney Plus in addition to theaters, then you've got kind of a really interesting argument there. And as a number of people have pointed out, if Disney can pull this sort of thing with major stars, and Scarlett Johansson and Emma Stone are major stars, what are they pulling with other people, with people below the line, with artists, directors, writers, etc., who are also have contracts with them, and are kind of maybe being screwed out of things because they're because of the way that they've chosen to release certain films. And we even talked in the last episode about why Disney chooses to release certain things on Disney Plus with Premiere Access when they release it just on Disney Plus. So you've got Luca and Soul both being released on Disney Plus without any Premiere Access, all of that kind of thing. So there's a weird thing that's going on that will be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Well, this is what's interesting about the whole thing. And this is one of the things that Scarlett Johansson's lawyers were talking about was, I don't know if it was in the lawsuit, but I've seen this being talked about in other places. It's the fact that when Warner Brothers decided last year that they were going to release their entire 2021 slate day and day theaters and on HBO Max simultaneously, they went back. They didn't do this before they made the announcement, but after they made the announcement, they were kind of trapped, and they went back and renegotiated all those contracts so that people were going to be fairly compensated for their films, especially if they had those back end deals. And the thing is that Warner Brothers isn't even charging a Premiere Access price. They're just releasing it to anybody with an HBO Max subscription. And so by doing that, they are losing some money because people are going to go, like, I'm going to stay home and watch the Suicide Squad on HBO Max instead of going to the theater. But for Disney, who is charging $30 for these premiere movies, and I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about why doing streaming and theatrical simultaneous releases during a pandemic makes sense and is a good idea. But the fact that Disney's still making a buttload of money on these releases and now has found a way to work around not sharing the profits with people when they have back end deals, it's disgusting. And I'm glad, I wish it wasn't, Scarlett Johansson that had to be the face of this, but I'm glad that she is taking a stand because, like you say, there are a lot of other people who don't have the clout that she has that are going to be influenced by this or affected by it.
Yeah, I think that it's more important in a lot of ways that this is being brought up by a major star than who is bringing it up, right? So yeah, I even said on Twitter, I was like, I find myself in the disturbing position of agreeing with Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, but yeah, she has a point. She has a point. And I think that when we read these kinds of things to Disney, it's like, well, she's already been paid $20 million. Just like, yes, that is a lot of money. But also, this is the point of all of this in a broader sense is, can you screw people out of their contracts, basically?
And Robert Downey Jr. got like $150 million for the last two Avengers movies. So you want to say 20 million is fair when another dude who's in like 1/16 of the movie gets $150 million? Like, maybe that was fair for him, but also she deserves more too, especially if they already agreed to it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting argument, and I think we do have to mention Johansson is seeking both punitive and monetary damages as well as a trial by jury. So this is going to be like in the public eye for a while.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to just jump in and say is, no, I have not read the contract. No, I am not an expert in contract law. So maybe there is some way that Disney wrote the contract so that technically she's not owed anything. And maybe technically they are following the contract and they're not in violation. And you know what? If that's the case, that'll be proven. The lawyers will figure all that out. But if they are in breach of contract, she needed to call it out and they need to be held accountable for that.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to follow this and to see what actually happens with all of it, because this is the kind of thing that's going to keep on coming up, particularly as streaming services become more and more powerful. We've seen this kind of accelerated because of the pandemic, I think. Mm-hmm. But this was something that was going to develop over the course of several years, of more things being released on streaming, this whole question of day and date release, this whole question of access, who gets paid for what, how they report box office take versus streaming numbers, all of that kind of thing. And this is kind of in flux right now because the pandemic sped everything up, but the problems and the questions were already there.
Yeah.
And And so it'll be interesting to see how these kinds of things play out. And of course, the goal is ultimately Scarlett Johansson should definitely get what is owed to her on her contract. And
regardless of your personal feelings about her.
This isn't, I do think that it's very marked that the people that are bringing these lawsuits are women. And these are major stars. And, we've talked about even income inequality and the inequality in pay rates in Hollywood. And you're talking about incredibly high paid stars, right? But as you say, when Robert Downey Jr. is making so much for a film and Scarlett Johansson is making a lot less for the same film or for a film that she's headlining, you do kind of begin to raise questions 10 years
to get.
Yeah, you do definitely raise questions about it. And those are fair questions, regardless of our personal feelings about Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving on, I think let's talk about a couple of questions that we got on Twitter. We kind of already answered this first one because we just spent a while talking about it. But so we had a question from
there's a part 2 to that. So
yeah, at Pala Fangirls. I'm Team Ghostbusters 2016. Woo! Yay!
So where are we?
So seeing the new trailer for it didn't get me excited. Yes, we absolutely agree with you. 100%. There should just be the next sequel to the 2016 Ghostbusters.
Yes.
So her other question was, what's a movie that if it was directed by a woman would be significantly better? Karen, I want to start with you. What do you think?
I mean, all of them, but
all movies should be directed by women.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many that come to mind. I think that Rise of Skywalker would have been a million times better if it was directed by a woman. I think that a number of superhero films would be better with women behind the camera. I think it's actually a hard question to be really specific about because of the fact that there's so many things that go into making a movie. But I'm just trying to think of some female-centric films that I'm like, this is almost there, but
well, one that came to mind, and I actually really like this film, but I think there would have been a different perspective if it had been directed by a woman, is Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah.
And because that one is very female-centric, and I think that it does the female-centric nature of it really, really well. But there were definitely points where I was like, I feel like that this is just missing a little bit of understanding that there's not, and I'm not saying that male directors can't direct very feminist films or anything like that. And like I say, I really like the film. But there's a moment, I think, in some female directed films where it just clicks. You're like, yes, you understand the way that women feel and the way that women interact with each other. That is just feels different when it is a female director or female writer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one that just came to mind was Hidden Figures.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely a good one.
I think that would have been, I think that would have, it's a fine movie. There are definitely some other elements of that too that could have been improved with a different perspective as well. But yeah, I just, there's a lot.
I really want to see a woman direct one of the Fast and Furious films.
Oh, that'd be so fun. Who would you like to direct?
Oh God, well, it's got to be someone who's really good at action. Kathy Yan, actually, I think would make great Fast and Furious film, and she would actually fit in really well because she likes those kind of big colors and the kind of neon look and everything, and she's such a good action director. I think that she could do a lot of really interesting shit with it. She's definitely one, but it's such a male, in a lot of ways, it's such a male-centric franchise, right?
Yeah.
But there's a camp element to it, and I think that the directors of these films, especially what's his name, James, I'm blanking on his name now. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. James Wan. James Wan.
I couldn't think of it either. All I could think of was Cameron, and I was like, I know it's not James Cameron, and I'm not saying that.
James Wan. I think that he does a great job with them. But it would be nice to see like a more feminine perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that there could be a lot of fun stuff to do with the men in that film, in those films, as well as the women. So I'd love to see. Yeah, get Kathy Ann in there. Come on.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I just thought of another one. And I enjoy this movie, but it would be, and I enjoy Steven Soderbergh as director, but Erin Brockovich would have been so much better told from a female perspective. Maybe she wouldn't have been dressed the way she was, because Erin Brockovich doesn't dress like that, you know. And it's just like there's just little things where it's like, it's almost there. It could be so much better.
I just thought of one, Showgirls.
Yes.
I want Showgirls.
As we know, because Hustlers.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say maybe we actually already had that, but just should know the story of Showgirls, but just directed by a woman, written by a woman.
Yeah, totally agree. All
right. Also, Suicide Squad definitely would have been better.
Yeah, let Kathy Ann direct the remake of that, or the next one, or whatever.
Or just Birds of Prey 2.
I would also like that.
Which would be great. So yes, sorry that I forgot James Wan's name.
No, I couldn't think of it either.
So we also had another question from @Noah_Saturn. What is your favorite comedy directed by a woman? And I think we've talked about this a couple of times before. There are a lot of them. One of my favorites is Wayne's World. Obviously, I think that's kind of one of my top comedies of all time. Anyways, what's one of yours, Karen?
Clueless, Big, Jumpin' Jack Flash.
The answer is always the answer is always anything by Penny Marshall, by the way.
Yes, exactly. She's one of my favorite directors. I love her. There was another one I was thinking of, and now I lost it again. Elaine May. A New Leaf. Yeah, A New Leaf. That's the one. I couldn't think of the title. You couldn't think of James Wan. I couldn't think of A New Leaf. I love that one. Gosh, there's so many. I think Birds of Prey has a lot of comedy in it. I would almost consider that a comedy.
I do think that Birds of Prey qualifies as a comedy. It's an action comedy. It's definitely, again, it's that sense of fun that we're going to deal with things like trauma and violence, but also have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Because that's what women do.
Exactly.
So I thank you so much, guys, for your questions. We do always put out a call for questions on our Twitter, but also if you are one of those people who listens to us and you're not on Twitter, please feel free to send it to our email address. If you're a patron, post it on Patreon. We do check those things, and we'll try to be certain to get to any questions, comments, suggestions, etc., things to talk about. We're always glad to hear from people.
Yeah, we love questions. We really do.
It's fun because it gets us talking too. It gets like, oh yeah, I really like that movie.
Yeah, we try to think about them ahead of time, but sometimes some of us go camping and don't notice questions until an hour before we're gonna record.
So let's move on to what we have been watching, because there's a lot of different things I think that we've been experiencing in the past few weeks. I did get to watch Black Widow, which I greatly enjoyed. I agree with everybody who's been talking about Florence Pugh. I also liked, like you mentioned, the elements, the discussions of human trafficking and the way that gets worked into the story itself, and that it feels organic, but it also feels like the film is actually doing something that's addressing real world problems and using the superhero genre to address those issues. And I liked that. I found it very satisfying. I actually kind of wish that Black Widow was in her own movie a little bit more. I felt like she was the plot mechanism. She was the plot driver, but other characters got to have more fun, which sort of made me sad a little bit. But
she was never a particularly fun character.
True.
So I don't know. To me, it made sense, but I hear what you're saying.
True, but I think that they could have given her more sort of the humorous lines that they also gave to Yelena. that there could have been a little bit of a better balance there. But I do love Florence Pugh in that. I love
such a poser.
And I also loved David Harbour. I admit that I thought he was great as their father, and I like the fact that he balanced the sort of silliness with this, like, he actually is this great hero.
Yeah.
And he believes in himself so much, and he does like believe in his girls. Like, he really does love them in his own ways, just kind of a fucked up way.
Yeah.
But I quite enjoyed him and him trying to. I loved the conversation when they were in the helicopter initially, and they're like, yes, it's because it's not our time of the month because we don't have periods, because our uteruses were removed. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, we don't need to talk about, oh really? Because I was going to talk about fallopian tubes.
Yep. So
I
great.
enjoyed that.
Definitely.
So I got to see Black Widow. Karen, what are you watching in these days?
Okay, well, I do want to talk about a movie I saw that I really liked, but first I want to mention that there are 2 movies out. Well, there are 3 movies out this weekend. I'll talk about the other one in a minute, but 2 of them are really not good. One is Stillwater with Matt Damon, and it tries to be like 18 different movies all in one, and none of them work. It's like just when it starts to kind of go somewhere interesting, it takes a shift and tries to do a different tone and a different genre of movie, and it just is a big old mess. And just leave Amanda Knox alone. That poor girl's been through enough. Like, come on. And I know they tried to backpedal and say, oh no, this isn't really about her, but it's 100% inspired by her story, and then completely just ruins it and is trashing her reputation, and that's not fair.
And she released a very long Twitter thread about that as well. Yeah, that was very good, because I hadn't realized that that's what this film was based on.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, I'm not just taking issue with the fact that it's based very loosely on her experience and on her, but it's also just like, it's a mess of a movie. It really truly is. It starts off being kind of this family drama of like this dad who has to travel back and forth to France to visit his daughter who's been in prison for this murder, but then it becomes like a mystery where he's trying, like a kind of a thriller where he's trying to solve the crime and get her out of prison, and then there's another shift where something goes wrong, and then it becomes this like romance movie where he's just like met someone and he's just living his life and just going about his day to day, and it's just like, come on, just pick a movie and make it, and so it's just a frustrating mess. So, and yeah, anyway, and then the other one that I did not enjoy was Jungle Cruise, which,
this makes me sad.
Admittedly, I'm not a fan of The Rock, but that was not my biggest problem with the movie. I was 15 minutes into it going, oh my gosh, I'm so bored. The introduction to Emily Blunt's character is like straight out of Rachel Weisz and The Mummy completely. I mean, it's like there's even certain moments, like shots, that they completely recreated, and it's just like not that interesting. And then you meet him and it's just like, okay, so he's just doing the narration from the Jungle Cruise ride at Disneyland, and it's like, this isn't done creatively, or and it's like, I love that ride, it's a lot of fun, the jokes are they never get old because they're dumb and they're silly and you've grown at them, but you enjoy it, and that's why you go on that ride. But then to just like recreate that script for the movie, it was just like, oh, come on guys, do better. But then it doesn't stop. Like, that keeps happening through the whole movie, and the story is weak. It's trying to be the next Pirates of the Caribbean, but this is one of the things that, I don't know if I was talking to you about this or someone else, but one of the problems is that why the first Pirates of the Caribbean worked was Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow was not playing Johnny Depp. He was becoming Captain Jack Sparrow and creating this iconic character that ended up getting nominated for an Oscar. It's a memorable character, and that's the reason that we have 5 of these movies, is because people kept wanting more until we realized, like, oh no, less is definitely more. But with with Jungle Cruise, you don't have an iconic character that comes out of this. It's The Rock playing The Rock. It's Emily Blunt being sweet and cute, but basically playing Emily Blunt. And so all these things just combined make it a movie that's just not good. Like, go watch The African Queen instead, which actually inspired the ride in the first place. Go watch Romancing the Stone. Go watch The Mummy. Go watch, all these other, go watch the first Pirates of the Caribbean again, and just, you'll have a much better time.
That's unfortunate because I do like both of them. I do like The Rock, and I like Emily Blunt, and it's the trailers definitely made it seem like it should be a lot better than it sounds like it is.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. That makes me sad.
Me too.
I mean, I may watch it at some point when it's like not on Premiere Access, but it's just there and available. Yeah. But yeah,
and when you're not paying for it, maybe you'll enjoy it. But I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was any fun.
That's sad. That makes me sad.
Yeah. What else have you been watching?
Well, there are two other things that I wanted to talk about. One of them is actually just a film that I got onto because I'm currently staying with my parents and my mother wanted to watch it. It's part of the adult animation collection on the Criterion Channel right now. I think it's called Art in Animation, and it's these different films from different cultures that are really artistic animated films, and they are generally adult animated films. These are not films that are made for children. And the film, The Painting, is really fascinating. It's about these characters who live within an unfinished work of art, and they have divided themselves into a society where you have the all done, so the images that have been completed, right, and painted in, who are the kind of overclass. You have the half dones, who are these kind of middle images that they're not totally painted in, but they're mostly painted, and then the sketches that are just these kind of nebulous little line drawings, right? And they have split themselves into the social hierarchy where the all-dones are, kind of the lordly class, and then the half-dones are the middle class and all of that. And basically 3 characters decide that they're going to go look for the artist to complete the painting because they think that this will fix their society, it will make everybody equal. It's a fascinating film. It's gorgeously animated. It uses all of these different influences from different art periods. It uses Picasso and Matisse and Chagall and all of that. So we've got a lot of different, Modigliani is in there. So there's all these different kind of influences that are interacting with it. But then it becomes this story that really is about social hierarchy, social stratification, and ultimately, interestingly enough, about God, because essentially these characters are going to look for their creator. And they end up going in and out of other paintings in this search for him. So it's a really fascinating film. It's still on the Criterion Channel, I believe, and not very long either. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. So, it's a quick watch. It's very entertaining, beautifully animated, and it provoked a lot more questions for me than I expected it to.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. So the other thing that I wanted to mention really quickly is that I've gotten to watch The White Lotus because people kept on talking about it. And I was like, okay, I have to see this. So The White Lotus is a limited series on HBO Max right now. That's about a week at a Hawaiian resort, and all of these different characters who are going to this resort for different reasons. And it is one of the most stressful viewing experiences. I have had a lot of stressful viewing experiences recently. I rewatched Uncut Gems also.
Oh yeah.
It's very stressful, but it's fascinating because you get introduced to these characters, and they're almost stock characters, right? They're very recognizable stereotypes and types. And then it begins to dig into who they are and why they're at this resort. And it's very sinister. It manages to make very sort of simple things feel very sinister. And it's like these festering animosities, these festering desires and everything that is just kind of beginning to bubble to the surface I'm mixing my metaphors there, sorry. That this just like beginning to come up, and the series so far does a really good job at creating these characters that are fascinating, that are very human, that are unlikable, but that you want to know what happens. It's just like, what is going to happen to these people next? And I do have to say, Jennifer Coolidge really is an MVP. She is great in this. If you've ever suspected that she was a bad actress, like, watch this show. She is really a wonderful performer. And so far we're 3 episodes in. I think the next episode releases today, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes. It is a stressful experience, though.
Nice.
It's kind of like someone is going to kill someone else.
Yeah, I really want to see it. So it looks, I've heard so many good things. Well, yeah, so many good things about it. And then it's just, I have been watching a lot of Olympics coverage. And so I just haven't made time to like sit down and start something new. So, but there's one other movie I saw this week.
Yes.
And it's a movie that I waited a very long time from the time I heard it was going to be a movie to finally get to see it. And that is The Green Knight. And I loved it.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm so jealous.
Oh my gosh. I loved it so much. And I don't want to say too much because I want you to just go in and just enjoy the experience of watching the movie. But, you know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day about how like we both had read the poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight back, like, I think she read it in college. I read it in high school, like excerpts of it. We didn't read the whole thing in my class, but how this is just such a weird, crazy story. It's good, but it's just so weird. It's like, how can this be filmable, you know? But David Lowery found a way to really do justice and really bring that artistry to this legend that has elements of myth and fantasy, but also feels grounded. It doesn't ever feel like over the top and overwhelming with the fantasy elements of it. And it really is, it really focuses on the internal conflict of man versus self rather than man versus nature or man versus man. And also it really focuses more on his internal experience while he's going on this like hero's journey. So it's beautifully done. And I think that it's one of those that mileage will vary. Some people are not going to enjoy it, partly because I think they just don't get it because they don't have maybe the background that you kind of need to have for a film like this. But like definitely the couple that was sitting next to me in the movie got up and left because they just were like, this is boring, I don't get it. And you know, I can't blame them, because I think if you don't know what you're getting into when you walk into that movie, it's going to be a unexpected experience. But Dev Patel was great, and David Lowery he really makes movies that I love. He's so gifted at taking his time. He doesn't rush things, but he doesn't linger too long either. I don't know if that makes sense without context, but it's like there's so much happening while he's just letting the camera just kind of like sit there. And he does that a lot with this, because there's a lot of time where it's just quiet and Dev Patel is just by himself, you know, and going through his experiences, and he's so captivating, and it's incredibly well done. So beautiful movie. It was totally worth the wait. I loved it.
I am super jealous. Like I am looking forward to seeing it. Not as much as some people have been, where it's been like, oh my God, I must have this movie now.
Like
but
me.
But I am looking forward to it. Like it looks fascinating, and I did find it funny that it's obvious when some people have read the poem and when people haven't, because they're just like, this just looks weird. It's like, okay, let me explain to you something about Middle English poetry.
It's all weird.
It's weird. It's not what you think it is. You know, we have this view of what chivalric romance looks like, but that's not what it often is.
Exactly.
And Gawain is definitely one of the weirder ones, I think.
Mhm.
I actually, one of my claims to fame is that I had to read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight in Middle English during my university career.
Wow.
Because that was one of the university that I went to, their English department, you had to learn and read both Middle English and Old English to get your English degree. You had to go through these classes. And so that was obviously one of the poems that we had to read. So, which is even more of a trippy experience when you're sort of half understanding some of the things, you're trying to parse out what is being said. And then you're like, okay, do I understand that this is what is actually happening? And then you look it up in your book, you're like, okay, yes, I got that perfectly. It's just strange.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's plenty of that in here.
Good. I'm glad.
Yes.
So anything else? I've pretty much exhausted my watching for the week.
Yeah, just that and the Olympics. So much Olympics. It's funny how because there's stuff that's like I don't watch BMX racing in real life. I don't watch swimming, but when the Olympics is on, it's like I have to watch all the swimming. I have, I get obsessed.
Completely understand, and it's been a bizarre Olympics too.
It really has, which I mean, trying to pull off the Olympics during a pandemic was already gonna be bizarre and complicated, so
yes. I'm still kind of amazed that it's gone ahead, but
and really that considering all the problems they could have, I think that it's going reasonably well. Really?
Yeah. So far, at least, knock on wood.
Yeah. There's still like a week to go, so.
Yeah. So I think that is going to close us out. As always, thank you so much to everybody for listening, and thank you especially to our patrons, who include Adriana, Ali, Heather, James, Kathleen, Carriata, Mason, Matt, Matthew, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Robert, Steve, Sharon, Pau, and Will. Thank you so much, guys, for continuing to support us. We are going to have some fun things coming up. We've been on vacation and have been doing a lot of different stuff. I had no idea what week it was. I was surprised that it was August 1st.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit behind on scheduling things, but we are going to get some fun things scheduled. We're going to have a watch party pretty soon. And we're going to do a couple of more fun things for bonus episodes and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that. We are thinking of you guys. And as always, we are really, really grateful for your support. If you want to join our patrons, then you can go to patreon.com/citizendame, and you can get bonus episodes and fun stuff. We're redesigning our logo. And so we're going to release some buttons and things like that with the new logo once we get that done. If you want to just kick us a couple of dollars, we have a Ko-Fi account. That's ko-fi.com/citizendame. We also have a Zazzle store, zazzle.com/citizendamepod. You should still be wearing your masks, even if you are vaccinated, and especially if you are in public and indoors. Let's cut down on the Delta variant. And you can get a Citizen Dame mask from our Zazzle store.
Yes.
Let's see, what else? We also, of course, have our website. That's citizendamepod.com, and there are a couple of new reviews up there. We're going to come back with our 5s, and I've got a couple of reviews that have been percolating for a while, and I just have to get them done and posted. So be certain to keep an eye out for that. You can also email us if you want to get in contact with us, citizendamepod@gmail.com. Also, let us know if there are any issues with episodes, if there are any technical problems that you're noticing. And also, if you do listen to us on iTunes, you listen to us on, I think we're on Spotify, just leave us a review, leave us a rating, especially if you like the podcast. Mm-hmm. It is really helpful for us because it's, first of all, it's nice. And it lets us know that the people are enjoying listening to us, and also just getting our ratings higher is always a nice thing. And thank you to everyone who has rated us so far. You're lovely people.
Yes.
We are also on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Citizen Dame Pod, and Letterboxd at Citizen Dame. And I'm going to try to be posting a few more lists and stuff like that, most of which is just me being snarky and being like, here's some awesome movies by women because you keep on asking us about that random
Exactly.
dudes. You can also get in touch with us individually. I am on Twitter and Instagram at LHBusiness and Letterboxd at LHBusiness. Karen, where are you?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Karen M. Peterson.
And that will close us out for this week. We will talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Excalibur.
Wow. 64 Fender Stratocaster in classic white with triple single coil pickups and a whammy bar.
Pre-CBS Fender corporate buyout.
I'd raise the bridge, file down the nut, and take the buzz out the low E.
God, I love this woman. Hi, Garth.
Hi.
Where's the clerk? I know. I'll use the "May I help you" riff.
May I help you?
Yes, my good man. I'd like to have a look at this Fender Stratocaster, please.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Again?
Yes.
Now be careful. Hey!
No stairway. Denied.